Good evening. I think it's about time that we start. As you know, this is a wonderful place to have our meetings. We love that they allow us to do this, but we have to get out of here with everything put away by 7 o'clock. So we pretty much have to kind of wind up about 6:30-ish or thereabouts. Siobhan, would you hand me that newspaper?
Yes.
Okay.
Ooh.
I wanted to give a shout out to the Rosamond News. I picked up my Rosamond newspaper today, and on the second page, we have a lot of information that was written by Glenn Settle about the history of this area that's been put in their newspaper for all to see. And this is really exciting that, you know, anybody who gets a Rosamond News can see that. Let's see. In 1776, Father Garces came to from the San Fernando Mission, crossing into the west end of the valley and through Willow Springs. I think that's really exciting. And not only is it on the second page, it is further on this page. I mean,
good. Look at that.
It's just so exciting. So it's in the Rosamond News that came out January 19. So grab it. It's neat news. Or old news, but it's still pretty neat. I'm going to have to correct something that I've sort of been reminding people about. In March, we thought we were going to have to move our meeting back a week because the gentleman that was going to come could not come on the third Tuesday. And we just found out today he can't come on the fourth Tuesday either. So it looks like March is going to be regular. And poor Siobhan's going to have to figure out, you know, if worse comes to, you know, we have some really neat videos that were done years ago. I mean, we have Glenn Settle out at the Gold Camp talking about the buildings, and we have a lot of stuff. So we might be able to fill in Siobhan if we need to. Anyway, welcome everyone again. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Siobhan, and I'll get out of the way slowly.
Make it short.
There you go, Siobhan.
Okay, if you are not following the Rosamond Library on Facebook, they are doing a phenomenal job, and they wrote a great bio on Barbara. So I'm going to just read what they wrote because I was so impressed. And it said, Barbara Schultz has a lifelong passion for aviation and preserving its history. Her journey as an aviation historian began after a trip to South America when she decided to take on a new challenge and signed up for flying lessons. She trained at Fox Field in Lancaster, California, where she completed her final check ride for her pilot's license with Bill Barnes, son of the legendary Pancho Barnes. Following Bill's tragic death in a plane crash, Barbara inherited his and Pancho's memorabilia, an invaluable collection that has deepened her connection to aviation history. Barbara has consulted on numerous projects, including films and documentaries, and is a proud member of the 99s, the International Organization of Women Pilots, founded in 1929. Barbara was not there for the founding, just to be clear. As Amelia Earhart famously said, fly for the fun of it. And Barbara definitely does that. She has written at least 8 books. And she has tonight one on Amelia Earhart and how she financed her trip, and that is the hardback book for $25. And then she has a book on Kern County Aviation for $20 as well. And we are just so honored, Barbara, to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Without further ado, I will turn myself.
Use that mic. She's not mic for the audience. So she needs
got
the
it.
mic.
Okay.
I need this mic.
All righty.
Well, thank you for coming. And a lot of people, when they think about women in aviation, they immediately think about Earhart. However, there are a lot of women and there were a lot of men that laid the foundation for pilots today. I'll turn this on. So let's go back to the 1700s when the ladies wanted to do exhibitions in balloons. The balloons were tethered.
Barbara, should I turn some lights out? Audience, should I turn some lights out? Okay.
What am I doing?
Let me turn some lights out.
Oh.
I'm a little old and slow, and it just occurred to me I need to do this. So hold on a minute.
Is that better?
Is that better? Okay.
Okay.
That's perfect. Okay.
Anyway, Madeline Blanchard became the first professional woman balloonist, and thousands of people will come out to watch her in her balloon. She didn't do very much, but she set some fireworks off one time. Oh, not a good thing to do in the balloon. The balloons blew up with fires, so she was the first woman not just doing a balloon, but the first woman killed in an aviation accident. And then Mary Myers, she worked with her husband in developing balloons, and she was made the first ascent in a balloon. It took place in 1880 for a test flight with her inventor husband. The only problem that the women had in the balloons was when they landed. Just my thing is falling apart here. There we go. They needed a proper way to land so that their bloomers wouldn't be exposed, so they landed on their back and kind of rolled over. Dolly Shepard also was a balloonist, and she was the first woman to fly an untethered balloon. She began parachuting in 1908, and as we go along, you're going to notice that most of these women were very patriotic, and where they could, they would join the military to help out. Dolly was in the Women's Volunteer Reserve in World War I. World War II, she operated a shelter in London. On her 90th birthday, she flew with the famous Red Devil's parachute. And if you've been around the desert long enough, we used to have the Barnstormers reunion. It was with the museum there. And Tiny Broderick used to come, and she was a very tiny little gal. And she became the first woman to leap from an airplane. First parachute that a woman self-deploy canopy. She made over 1,100 jumps in her lifetime. Edith Maud Cook, excuse me, 1878 to 1910. She was a British parachutist, balloonist, and aviatrix. She received her pilot's license in 1910, first female pilot. Reputed to have made over 300 jumps, Edith died from injuries sustained following a jump from a balloon in 1910. So, of course, it was very dangerous, and there wasn't a lot of life left, you know, when some of these gals did their aerobatics. Ramon LaRoche, beautiful woman. She was the first world licensed pilot. She's French. And she also set the first nonstop long-distance flight, 1913, of 4 hours. That was quite something back then. In 1990, she had an altitude record of 15,700. And she also worked in the World War I as a military driver. Helen Dutre, she actually came to the United States and did a lot of stunting out of Clover Field, which is now Santa Monica. She claimed to be the first flying woman when she flew a Santos Dumont Demoiselle in 1910 in France. And she was very style conscious. There wasn't an outfit that women could really wear, but she was the first one that actually designed Parisian couture as a flying outfit. And I have a picture of the Demoiselle there that you can see how fragile these aircraft are. Betsika Reich was actually the first American woman to fly. A lot of people said Blanche Stewart Scott, but her next slide will explain that. She and her husband built an airplane in their living room, and she helped inspire a lot of other women at that time. And you can see in the picture there, it's the Automobile Club had an aviation club as well, and they gave her that medal as the first woman in aviation. So 1910. The biggest problem when they were flying in the type of airplane that's there is they had these skirts, big skirts, and they would just tie a rope around the bottom of them so they wouldn't get caught in anything. And this is Blanche Stewart Scott, which reportedly was the first woman, but she was taxiing her aircraft across the field and hit a bump and was elevated for about 5 seconds, so that doesn't really count. But she flew for a long time, actually. She was inducted in the National Women's Hall of Fame in commemoration of pioneer achievements. And these women would go to carnivals around the United States, and that's where they earned a little bit of her money, and they had a title, and she was called the Tomboy of the Air. Alice McKee Bryant, very interesting woman. She saw an advertisement. It says, wanted young lady to learn to fly for exhibition purposes in Palms, California. Palms is still there, I think, near West LA. So she began taking lessons in 1912, and then she started doing exhibition flying in Washington, and actually set an altitude record of 2,900 feet. And she gave up flying after her husband passed away. But she became a lawyer. She was a deep sea scuba diver. She did all kinds of things. Laura Bromwell, she was the first aerial policewoman. She graduated from the New York Aerial Women's Police Reserve in October 1919. They were called Sky Cops. They were 17 to 25 years old, and Reserve Lieutenant Bromwell performed daring stunts over captive audiences rather than policing. In her stunting, she did a loop-to-loop record of 199 loops, which is phenomenal. And she had a speed record of 135 miles per hour. In June 1921, she was killed while stunting. So, becoming pilots, the reserve women's duty, the Sky Carps, included regulating and controlling traffic, transporting prisoners, and pursuing criminals. So they didn't really do a lot of flying. But I like that picture, though. So how did all of these pilots organize and get certificates? The Automobile Club founded the Aero Club of America in 1905. And it was a social club to promote aviation, and you can see in the middle the medallion they would award to people that had achieved significant flying records. A lot of people don't know that the Automobile Club was around a long time ago. So some of the very first pilots, Harriet Quimby and Mathilde Massant, who are very good friends. They had lovely outfits that they wore. The two of them made a lot of trips to Mexico together. Julia Clark, who was actually the first woman to die in an airplane accident. And then we've got Catherine and Marjorie Stinson. Her brother was in charge of the Stinson airplane factory. Bernadette Miller, Ruth Law, and actually Catherine Stinson was the first person, man or woman, to fly an airplane over the Tehachapis in the very, very early days. So I put this up because I want you to see the kind of airplanes these people were flying in this time. This was an international meet in 1911 in Chicago Park, or Grant Park, Chicago. Very flimsy aircraft. You have a strong wind, it'll just destroy the aircraft. Just a minute, there we go. I'm not sure if we could turn that up.
It's coming through, Barbara, yeah.
I don't think the FAA would let you do that today. She's got our tools. She's going to put it on and secure it. So that's Gladys Engel, and she was quite the stunt pilot. What I find interesting today is people say they're ring walkers, but they're up there and they're strapped in on the wing. This is real wing walking. But she was the only female member of the Black Cats, and was in a lot of movies, did a lot of performing. She was very well known. If somebody not a
Barbara, your mic.
Oh, sorry, okay. Lillian Boyer, she had a flying circus, and the best way to make money, of course, was to have your name out there. She was also a wing walker, and you can see in the picture below, she's not strapped onto anything. She performed numerous aerial stunts that included automobile to airplane transfers, parachute jumps 21 to 29. During her second airplane flight, Lillian climbed out on the wing, the beginning of a daring career. And according to a newspaper, she was, without a doubt, the greatest thrill producer since the days of the gladiators. So if you had a carnival somewhere, you wanted some entertainment, you wanted people to come, you would have some of these people come and do stunts. Bernadette King, she was a very interesting woman. She got her license in 1935, and she had 2 flights, record flights for flying inverted between Agua Caliente, which is just north of the Mexican border, and Lindbergh Field between Bellingham, Washington, and Vancouver. So she used smoke riding to alert for publicity. And she also worked to alert forest rangers in case of a forest fire. But she's has a lot of oil on her. You can see that she just completed the inverted flight. She had a special oil container that would reverse when she flew upside down. And then we have the 1920s. Because of Lindbergh's flight in 1927 across the Atlantic, a lot of people were inspired to fly. Ruth Nichols, she was licensed in 1924, and she was the only woman at that time to hold speed, altitude, and distance records. And then Amelia Earhart was licensed in 1921, and she, of course, you know, set several records. Bessie Coleman, and these pictures are from a very private collection. The one on the top left is a picture with her sister, and I think I had another one, but they're very unusual pictures. Bessie wanted to learn to fly. Nobody would, well, a lot of instructors weren't keen on teaching women to begin with, and if you were a woman of color, you would not be able to learn how to fly. So she went to France and she got her pilot's license. She came back and started a little school, but then she realized she needed advanced certification, so she went back to France to get her instructor's license and some other permits. And she was killed in 1921 in an airplane accident. Edith Foltz and the Foltz-Up, this is a little bit about the fashion back in the 30s. Edith, if you see, she could pull her skirt up and make it into a vest, and then she had her jodhpurs that she could fly with. And then Harriet Quimby had her purple satin outfit, probably the loveliest of all of them. So by the late 1920s, women pilots began uniting to support their aspirations and promote aviation. The first, in 1928, National Aeronautical Association, organizing women to become a potent force for the future of aviation. And one of the only qualifications was you could be related to a man that was interested in flying. You didn't have to have any licenses or anything. This is a banner out of the Texas group. And then Elizabeth Beth Ulysses Grant McQueen, which is a mouthful, we call her Beth. She formed the Women's Aeronautic Association of California in '28, and because she saw the future of women on a worldwide basis internationally, she formed the International Aeronautical Association in 1929. And they were there particularly to stimulate interest in the women flying, to set records and make sure that they were recorded, scholarships. She was also a famous resident of the Mission Inn in Riverside, and she had a parrot that would drive all of the customers away about some point. So Wings Around the World for Peace and Prosperity. She also had a little police corps going on to could point your gun at people flying too low over Beverly Hills. And the statue there has an interesting story. It's a big sculpture, very heavy. I was at a event, and the gentleman that had the house asked me if I'd like to see his aviation room, and of course I did. So I went in, and it had mostly model airplanes, and on the desk I saw this brass wing sticking up, and I said, well, wow, what is that? And he says, oh, that's just some trophy that I got somewhere, and he's trying to read it, and I says, well, it says Wings Around the World for Peace and Prosperity, and he said, well, how do you know that? And I said, because that belonged to Beth McQueen's organization. So it's really a fantastic piece of history. But she was never a pilot. She had gone to the 1928, 29 national air races and saw that there were no women participating. which was her inspiration. And this is a group. I have my yellow stars there, and Elizabeth is in the middle. She's got a hat on, and then Bobby Trout is in front of her, a very good friend of mine, and Norma Granger, and Ruth Elder, who was also a movie star. So the 99s met November 29 and officiated in December of 1929, and they met in a hangar out at Roosevelt Field, and that teapot was on a mechanic's cart, and that was the beginning of their meeting. And that teapot actually is in the Museum of Women Pilots in Oklahoma City. And they called themselves the 99s because the official membership was 99 members. They had come up with all kinds of other names, but this one seemed to work. Just think if Pancho adjourned in, they'd be the hundreds. So other clubs that were formed, because this was the thing to do, was to support each other as a woman pilot. This Women's Wing and Prop Club, it's interesting what they say. It's a dismal feeling to land at an airport and not see signs of another woman anywhere on the premises. And the club advocated for monthly teas, and that way everybody could meet up with each other. The Chicago Girls Flying Club, their basic activity was putting on aerobatic shows, carnivals. You can see the pin up there that belonged to them, and they were based out of Curtis Field. And you can see the membership there, Chicago Girls Flying Club. And you know, the best part of research is trying to find all these little things to add to the pictures. And this is a poster, Chicago Girls Flying Club, October 2nd. And they stilted pretty much through maybe 1936, 37. The Betsy Ross Corps was an auxiliary air corps to the military, was formed in 1931, and Opal Kuntz was the founding. And I'm going to read what she said. It says, "We are carrying out a very interesting experiment proving to men in the military world, as well as to various government officials, that women can stop their mouths shut, or keep their mouths shut, and can work together harmoniously in a big way." So this is the Betsy Ross Corps, and it was officialed. Mildred Morgan is there in the picture, as well as the president of the DAR, Daughters of American Revolution, and Eleanor Washington Howard, last relative of George Washington. So it's a very official group. And Pancho represented the Betsy Ross Corporation on the West Coast, and you can see that Opal signed the identification card, as well as Pancho signed Florence Lowe Barnes. Even though she went by Pancho Barnes, she always, when she signed her name, it was Florence Lowe Barnes. However, being on the West Coast and the group was on the East Coast, she decided, along with LaBelle Sweeley, that they would form their own women's auxiliary for the military. And so they formed the Women's Air Reserve, or WAR. And you can see in the picture there's a star underneath General Barnes. LaBelle Sweeley helped to organize it. She wanted to help in Long Beach. The Air Reserve was there, and they wanted to act as an auxiliary to that. They did parachute drops. They helped the horrible Long Beach earthquake. And then in 1934, they made the first group of women flyers doing a cross country. They had 3 Stearmans. One of them went down near Meteor Crater because they ran out of fuel. But they were on their way to Washington, D.C. because Phoebe Onley, who was another aviatrix, was working for the Department of Commerce, and they wanted to limit women flying from a certain time of the month. Well, I don't know who came up with that idea, but that's what, anyway, the 99s were asked to go, and they said nope, and Phoebe asked Pancho, and she says, I'm on it. So during the meeting, Phoebe gave Pancho a list of words she was not to use, and that was passed around to all the bigwigs, and just in case she made a mistake. Another group was the Women Flyers of America, and it was a civilian flying corps, and it really formed the basis of what would later become the Women's Air Service Pilots, or WASP. And the Tailspin Club, it really wasn't a club about pilots, but not Ruth Elder, there's some real pilots up there, and then there's some actresses, but they flew across country to promote the movie Tailspin, which was the first movie involving women flying. And there's a picture. So I would be remiss if we did not talk about silent flight. Maxine Dunlap was the first woman to receive a pilot's license in a glider. She received a Class C3 because she was aloft for 50 seconds. You had to be aloft for more than a minute to get a first class certificate, which Ann Lindbergh did, and you can see her husband there. So she had 10 hours of training from Mount Soledad, which is now by San Diego. And that's flying a bolus glider. Bolus gliders were made in San Diego. So now we're talking about clubs, glider clubs. So Sarah Peaches Wallace, she entered a competition to get a free enrollment in a instruction, which she won, and she received a license in both powered and motorless flight. So in 1930, she set a woman's record for time aloft, which is 25 minutes, which doesn't seem like much, but in a glider with no motor, I mean, it is amazing thing. And then she died 6 months later, not from an aircraft accident. She had a ruptured appendix. And Ruth Blaney Alexander held both types of licenses. 1930, she was taking off from Lindbergh Field in a Barling aircraft on her way east, but the aircraft was loaded down with too much fuel, and she just couldn't get over some of the hills, and she crashed. And then there was the Ann Lindbergh Glider Club, organized by Peaches, and Ann became the honorary president. You can see on the right, Tilly the Toiler, which was the trainer. They would get in that and practice, get up in the air and practice maneuvering it. And the Goodrich Glider Club, this would have been, where were they? I'm not going to remember. Cleveland, Ohio. It was formed by 37 women pilots in 1930, and they had a record-setting pilot, Frank Hawks, to instruct them. He was very famous for flying a glider across the United States on a tow. And then the Marville Crossing Glider Club was a name of in commemoration of Marville, who was killed in the 1929 National Air Race, most likely from carbon monoxide poisoning. And I did an article on the Hollywood Riviera, which was in Palos Verdes, Redondo Beach. It was quite the place. So there were many firsts in the place, the evolution of history, aviation history. Hilda Yang and Li, I can't say her name, were the first China pilots, and they flew around the United States. At that point, China was in revolution, uprising, and they were trying to get support from the United States to help out with that. Whoop. And Catherine Chung, she was the first Chinese woman to earn her pilot's license in the United States. And she, with a death-defying stunts, loops, barrel rolls, active member of the 99s. You can see the star there, and you might not recognize Gilmore, Roscoe Turner's Lion. I don't think that Gilmore was flying with Turner at that time because he was much too heavy. But she gave up flying a year after she got her license because somebody had flown her airplane and crashed and was killed. Janet Bragg was the first African-American woman to enroll in the Curtiss Wright School of Aeronautics. And she actually bought the school their first airplane and helped build the school's own airfield. She was rejected from joining the WASP, Military Nurse Corps, the Civilian Pilot Training Program, because of her race. What a shame. But she retired from flying in 1963 with about 2,000 hours of flight time. I imagine that she went on to instruct. And Willa Brown Chapel also attended that school and studied aircraft maintenance and earned a aircraft mechanics license in '35, and then in '38 she got her pilot's license, commercial pilot license, the first African-American woman to earn either type of license in the United States. And she's interesting because she was a founding member of the National Airmen Association and helped black pilots get accepted into the U.S. Army Air Corps, and she was a flight instructor for the Tuskegee Airmen. Nellie Wilhite, and remember back in the 20s and the 30s, there was not a control tower that you would talk to. You had flashing lights. If you could land, you got a green light. If you had to hold, red light. Nellie was deaf. She didn't have any hearing. She became a barnstormer and specialized in flower bombing and balloon racing. And she worked as a commercial pilot carrying airmail until 1944.
What was flower bombing?
Margaret Perry Cooper was the first woman to own and operate their own airport in Culver City. And you can see all the people that turned out for the grand opening of it. She was really had an active role in development in the Los Angeles area. This is my favorite lady, Sister Mary Aquinas Kinski. She loved aviation and she wanted to share it with her sister nuns. She got a Master of Science in Physics from Notre Dame, 1942. A year later, she began teaching or training teachers and the Civil Aeronautics Authority inspection and demonstration tours through aircraft factories and airports were frequent. So you can see on the right, the nuns are at the factory examining the aircraft engine. And she received a special citation for United States Air Force in 1957 for her outstanding contributions to the advancement of air power and the interest of national security and world peace. Somebody said there was a flying nun, you know, and you think about the movie, and I said, no, there really is a flying nun, but she wasn't a pilot. So. Olive Ann Miller Beach. Olive Ann and her husband, Walter, had the beach factory where they made travel airs in Wichita, Kansas. After he passed away, Olive Ann took over the business, and she's really considered the first lady of aviation. Very smart woman. And it's interesting, there's no pictures of Pancho, and I'll tell you why. I think I know why. Pancho went back to buy the mystery ship, or Model R, from Walter Beach. And she strolled in and strutted, and Olive Ann was there, and she said, well, you know, is that a man or a woman? So, you know, Pancho rips open her jacket and said, what do you think? So Pancho didn't really endure herself to very, very conservative, proper women. Anyway, she did buy the airplane, and in my research I met the gentleman that worked there as a youngster or high school, and he had happened to be there at the time, and he was telling me about this. And he said also, there's this other story, I don't know if it's true, but Pancho tried to horse trade with Walter Beach, and he says, no, this is the price. And she says, well, I'll be right back, or I'll be back in a week. So she went to the downtown Eaton Hotel in Wichita, turned tricks for a week, and came back with a bag of money. Fitting Pancho's story, but I don't think that's true. So Eleanor Roosevelt, she was a wonderful lady, and she was very, very supportive of aviation of any kind, particularly women pilots. So they were at a banquet, and Earhart, you know, she's in her gown, and so is Eleanor, and says, how would you like to go sneak out of here and go fly? Well, of course, Eleanor said, well, that's absolutely what we're going to do. So they went along a ride in a Curtiss Condor, which is actually a huge aircraft. And Eleanor had this to say, I'd love to do it myself, meaning flying. I make no bones about it. It does work in epic, doesn't it, when a girl in an evening dress and slippers can pilot a plane at night. Ellen Ritchie was the first woman to fly for an airline, 1934. Actually, she was only employed, I think, for about a year. And the first woman to earn an instructor's license, which was fundamental for the WEST program, so she did a lot of instructing for that. Jessica Cox, she has no arms, and she flies with her feet, and I've heard her speak, and she's absolutely an incredible person. She flies an air coupe because the controls, there are no foot pedals. The controls are all on the handheld thing. But she got her sport pilot certificate for the air coupe. Rudder pedals interconnected with the ailerons through the yoke. And she also promotes a mission now. It's called Right-Footed Foundation, that disability does not mean inability. And when I heard she was going to be a speaker at one of our events, it was kind of, we only know what she's going to do. But it was an amazing presentation that she did. And Leslie Irby, a dream deferred is not a dream denied. This is another group, it's called Able Flight, and they focus on pilots that are disabled so they can actually experience flight, and they built a Sky Arrow 600 for them to use. National Air Races. The first one was in 1929, and it took off from Cloverfield, which is now Santa Monica, heading to Cleveland. You can see Poncho's in the picture up there to the right. So Phoebe Omley was in the light plane category. Louise Thaden was in the heavy plane category, but under the misnomer that Louise actually landed first at National Air Race. It's been going on for years that she was the winner of that race, but actually it was a race by points, and Phoebe only accrued more points than Louise did, and she was the overall winner of that first 29 Derby. She used to come out and visit Poncho all the time out at her ranch, Phoebe. Nice gal. So some of the other gals that were flying at that time, Gladys O'Donnell, out of Long Beach, Jackie Cochran, most people know Jackie Cochran, Poncho, and I don't think little Chiquita could open his parachute if he had to, I don't know. Blanche Noyes, Mary Hazlip, who lived in Palos Verdes with her husband, and Thea Rasch, a German aviatrix. I think Cochran won the 1937 Bendix race. Florence Klingon-Smith, lovely girl. She won 4 woman-only events at the 1932 National Air Races. 1933, she was flying, okay, I'm going to come to it, a GB, which is a very small race plane, and somebody put a bigger engine on it, much too big for that aircraft, and Florence took off in it and started doing what you do around the pylons, and the fabric started falling off, and well, she was tragically killed because the GB, or no airplane can fly without fabric on the wings. But because of that, there was a lot of pressure on Cliff Henderson, who was in charge of the National Air Races, that women could not attend in 1934. They did put on their own show. So this is the view the public has of the women pilots, sort of goofy people. And then these are some covers that have the women aviatrixes on the covers. Sheet music. Since Katie, the waitress, was an aviatrix, and you know, just I don't think a lot of people were really still taking women as a genuine force in flight. And then during the war, we have the women in uniform. And they were receiving a lot more support because of the WASP program. So we go from, on the left, to Major Nicole Malachowski, first woman Thunderbird pilot, and I have met her. She's a lovely, lovely woman. And then at the bottom is Ruth Elder, and we transition to Madeline Swagel, U.S. Navy's first black female tactical aircraft pilot. So, you know, I've kind of gone through this quickly, but I think you can understand that everything has come around full force. Doesn't matter gender, doesn't matter race, it's just being a pilot above all is what's important. So I put this in because the 99s, which I'm a member of, always complain there's not enough women pilots. However, if you look at the percentages of here, I think women pilots now, I think it's 12%. But, and if you compare that to the military, where is the military here somewhere? Oh, 16%. So you can see that generally speaking, there are not a lot of women in many of the professions except flight attendants and teachers and archaeologists. At one time I thought it would be wonderful to become a flight attendant, and then I realized it was just a glorified waitress in the air, and I thought, no, I don't think I want to do that. These are the ladies. I wish I could turn it up. That's Catherine Chung. Gladys O'Donnell. And that is my last slide. I kind of went really fast because you said we had to be out of here by 7 or something.
Yes, we did everything put away. Let me grab a mic. Let me get
Here.
this one. Okay. Do any of you, first of all, we need to say thank you to Barbara. And if any of you have any questions, I'll try to repeat them so that Barbara can respond. Are there any questions?
What is flower bombing?
Siobhan has a question. What is flower bombing?
Where's what?
Flower bombing.
What is flower bombing?
Yeah, here.
Oh,
Answer it.
you go up in the air and you have a paper bag with flour in it and throw it out and try to get on the circle in the ground. We have done that several times out at our airport. Nobody could ever get in the circle.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Barbara, I kind of have one. Oh, there is one. Yes, yes.
What decade did you begin flying, Barbara?
What'd you say?
Barbara, what decade did you begin flying?
The 70s.
The 70s.
I took an overland trip down to South America with my sister, and when I got back, the fellow that I had a cabin, was cabin sitting before I left. He said he wanted to go out and learn how to fly. And I thought, oh, flying, okay, well, I don't know. So he wasn't interested when I got back. And I always like to challenge myself, and learning to fly was probably the biggest challenge I ever had, because it took forever to learn who was in control, me or the plane. But so I got my license and met my husband, and had 2 pilot boys, and now we have our own airport. My younger son is a corporate pilot in Bakersfield. He's also a DPE, which is a designated pilot examiner, so if you want your license, you got to get examined by a DPE. And then Scott is the chief engineer projects out at Stratolaunch. So how is it that they got into flying? I don't know.
Nobody in their family, obviously.
No, I'm proud of my boys, so.
You know, you did mention the WASPs, and it just so happens when I was young in college taking physics, I would sneak out in the morning early and meet this gal along the side of the street in her car, and we'd try to survive the whole physics class. And she had been a WASP, and I had never heard of WASPs before. So how did that whole
Well, the
WASP?
women, Jackie Cochran was pretty much founder of the Women's Air Service Pilots. We had 3 of them here. What is her name? Story. I can't think of her first name. Ty Killen was a good friend of mine. Babe Story was a WASP. And I attended a lot of the events with Ty, but
how was it formed? Why was it formed?
well, Jackie Cochran was instrumental in forming. They were not military pilots in the sense that they were off to war or they were going to go bomb anything. What they did was they ferried aircraft from one airport to another airport. And
During World War II, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
during
basically
World War II.
that's what they did.
Yeah.
But I think 10 years ago, something like that, they were finally recognized because they were not officially recognized by the federal government until a few years ago. So I think that was wonderful.
Any other questions? Yes, Gail.
What is the name of your airport?
What is the name of your airport?
Little Buttes Antique Airport.
And where is it?
It's on between 80th and 85th and Avenue C and B8. And we have a 2-story hangar that we live in the hangar upstairs. So it works for us.
Thank you.
And we have all of our airplanes in there except for one that's up in Bakersfield because it's too big.
Any other questions? Well, once again, we need to thank Barbara. She is just a wealth of knowledge. I've heard her speak on other aspects of aviation, and we really appreciate her coming and talking to us. So, Barbara, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, Barbara does have some books for sale, and so they're up here. So if you're interested, have questions, come this way. Okay.